Hi, my name is Rutendo Nyamuda, and welcome to another episode of In My 20s. In My 20s. You know, that jingle is very important. It's basically the heart of these discussions. But I just want to say welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us today. This is the In My 20s podcast, which we also film for YouTube. So please, throughout today's conversation, do comment, do like, share, let us know how you feel about today's episode. There is a lot that is happening in the world at the moment, and there are a number of discussions that people are having in South Africa, on the African continent, and in the world. And these discussions are important to us, and as we develop as a society, conversations around racism, sexism, femicide, gender-based violence, inequality, xenophobia, and those are just a few of the topics and issues that people are tackling and facing every single day. What I would want to say and would want to encourage is wherever you are and whatever conversations you're in and whatever people are in your communities and networks, be it on a personal level with friends and family or in the office space and workspace, if you see something or you hear something that you see someone being discriminated against or treated differently, speak up. It might be something that, at first, your heart is racing and you're like, should I not? You definitely should. Also making use of the platforms that you have at your disposal. So some people write, some people create music, some people use social media, some people march and demonstrate. Whatever your medium is and whatever communities you're around and surrounded by and with, and make sure that you are having these conversations. It affects us all, and the only way that we can grow and strengthen as a community and as a society and as a global society is when we're unafraid to have the seemingly difficult conversations, and when we're unafraid to speak up against injustice, and when we're unafraid, when we live out of a position of not being afraid, but out of courage and being brave. That is where we see true change, and that is where we can come together as a society and grow and strengthen. So I do hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please definitely comment, let us know your thoughts. And this is what this is about. This platform is not about us always agreeing. We might disagree in certain aspects, or we might agree in certain aspects, but it's important that we respect each other's viewpoints and opinions, and that we can have these conversations as well. But I think to start off with, Polello, if you wouldn't mind giving us about a 10-second elevator pitch. So 10 seconds, you're in the lift with someone who you admire, who you're just like, I can't believe this person's in the lift with me. It's 10 seconds until you reach ground and they leave. And this is your opportunity for you to tell them who you are and just who you are. So when you're ready.
So basically, I'd say that, my name is Polello. I'm pretty outspoken. A lot of people don't know that I'm shy. I'm really shy, but I hide that with this big personality. I love to laugh. Bubbles are my favorite thing on earth. I love to dream a lot, I like making new friends, but I'm equally, very scared of making new friends. I love working with people. People make me feel super energetic and they bring the best side of me. And I'm a very enthusiastic person, really energetic, to a point that is a little too much sometimes. But I also like my quiet time, and I like to go for really quiet periods, which kind of freak people out sometimes, but yeah, that's me, I guess.
All right, so first question is, I would love to hear a little bit about your background. Where are you from? What are you doing with your life, and how did you get to where you are
today? Okay, so my name is Polello Mowela. Recently turned 23. I'm from Olifantsfontein, which I have stayed for literally all my life. We would be residents in this town for 23 years in September. So this is literally the only life that I know. So that should let you know that I don't do well with change. I'm currently a student at Boston. I do media practices, and I'm in my second year of part-time studies. And the reason I went for part-time studies is because I worked from high school. I took a gap year, which was like half of a gap year, and I started working, and I liked working, and I've loved working. And so when I registered initially, I was I was doing two roles at an HR firm. I was a business development consultant, and I was also a strengths admin coaching person. So I was like the go-to person for their strengths coaching. And 2 years into that, I had an opportunity to go intern at YFM. And it was great because I really knew that I love media and I love entertainment, and I want to kind of move into that space. And so I then went there and I got in, and it was great. It was 8 months, and it was really fun. I learned so much, but it was also a time where I was still kind of discovering who I am. And so by the time it ended, I was kind of still on this journey of like, who am I? What do I want? And fast forward, 2019 ended, and early 2020, I realized that I want to go into speaking and owning this thing, and just dedicating my life to really enhancing this passion that I have for speaking. And so right now I do voiceover work, and I'm still a student at Boston, and I am a host at it's called the, oh my goodness gracious. I'm so sorry. Can I look, am I allowed to look down?
Go, look down.
All right.
I'll see
So I recently joined a team called the Project Decode Africa, and I'm a host for one of their podcasts, which is called Once Upon a Time, which focuses on basically sharing stories about the different industries in Africa, and kind of shining a spotlight on industries that a lot of people don't know about, or are not really sure what they do in terms of their specialization, or their inception, and where they're going, and all that stuff. And so I feel like a lot of interesting and exciting things are happening now just in that world of speaking, and I'm really excited about it. So that's kind of where I am, what I do. Yeah, that's it, I guess.
It's really, really exciting. And what I love, I mean, I love podcasts naturally, but podcasting is original. It's storytelling. It's storytelling at its the foundations is its storytelling. And you saying that you're going to speaking full time, which is the auditory way of storytelling, and putting it in podcast form, which gives it that timeless narration of life, and talking about things happening on the African continent. It's really, really exciting. And I love that you're so young and getting into this. We were actually having a discussion about different mediums, and how this is not a plug for podcasts, lol, but how podcasting is the next great medium. So it excites me to know that you're getting into it so early on. But someone they're 23, like that is, what's happening in 23 world?
Yeah, is that really young?
What are the 23-year-olds talking about? Because I feel like you're on the early side of 23. I'm on the later side of my 20s. My age will be revealed one day. But it's like, what's happening in 23? Are we TikToking? Are we YouTubing? What's happening in the scene?
Well, to be honest, okay, so when I turned 23, which was like a week ago, I felt really anxious. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm not 21 anymore. I can't just do whatever and just chill and not focus my efforts into what I want my life to look like. So I kind of felt old, like old in the sense that time is going on, and I'm not walking in purpose, but I realize I am. And then with regards to what 23 looks like and what people are talking about, I am a little antisocial. I'm not very within the trends of what is happening, and that's something I'm trying to work on. But with regards to the circle that I've surrounded myself with, the people who are in my sphere of influence, I'd say that I think 23 looks a little serious, or a little more serious than I thought it would be. We are, I mean, as far as entertainment goes, I'm not surrounded by people who are trying to create content for TikTok as per se, I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are in the faith-based type of content making and trying to get their stuff on YouTube and trying to get their stuff on onto podcasts and kind of narrate stories about their lives and their journey. And I'm one of those people as well. And people are also wanting to start conversations about what's happening with regards to the political scene in our country and things that are happening economically and just a lot of those types of conversations. And that's kind of just like what I'm seeing from where I am as far as my peers go. So yeah, I thought things would be very lighthearted on this side of 23, but it seems really serious, but good serious. Like we're moving forward, and we're on the way of changing things. You know, we wanna change a lot of things and have done things, or re-evolutionize rather the way we have seen things and done things. And that's kind of just like how 23 is looking, but not in a depressing way, in a really really exciting way.
Yeah.
I just have to clarify.
Yeah. And I think that the beautiful thing about being 23, I mean, you've said words like change and revolutionize. When we talk about the youth of any country, especially the youth in South Africa, has always been this heart for change and revolutionize and using your voice and standing up for something. And today is June 16th. And it is Youth Day in South Africa, which commemorates the 1976 Soweto uprising. And that is, again, when we talk about the youth standing for something and youth doing something, regardless of their age, that is such a pivotal moment in not just South African history, but I think global history. We're talking about children, you know, we're talking about the youth. So looking back, I mean, even for you as being part of the youth growing up in South Africa with that history, what does the 1976 Soweto uprising mean for you? What does Youth Day mean to you?
Well, first and foremost, I'd say that it makes me realize that there is so much power in young people kind of getting together and standing up for something. It makes me realize that the things that we say, the things that we think, and the things that we do are not insignificant, and that they do hold some value somewhere. And it also makes me realize that I am able to bring change in some way, in some capacity, and it makes me feel confident in wanting to see things change and knowing that I do possess the ability to start that conversation or start that movement in the kind of change that I want to see. And it also makes me realize that I think with everything that we pursue, you know, sometimes, especially as young people, we tend to think that, you know, I'm too young, I can't do this, I don't have enough experience, you know, I haven't been exposed too much. And okay, so I'm Christian, right? So a lot of the things that I do, I kind of like to involve the context of God and the Bible. And in the Bible, it says that go with the strength that you have. And applying that to young people is, even as a young person, maybe not even having the resources that you think you need to have to, you know, revolutionize something or start a movement, you kind of just go with the strength that you have, with whatever you have right now at your disposal, with whoever you have around you. You're able to make an impact, and people who see what you're trying to achieve will follow and will support your movement and will help you along the way. So I think the Soweto uprising has made me realize that you don't have to wait to have it all figured out and have everything, you know, all the resources that you need. Just go with the strength that you have, and some way, somehow, you will be met halfway. And whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, if it is good, you will be able to achieve it, and real change will happen.
Wow. You see, this is the thing about the youth is there's something that happens, and it's so interesting. There's something that happens between being a proper youth, I mean, like, you know, not working youth or early days of working, and then somewhere along the working line, when you start falling into the systems of corporate and stuff, the courage and the strength to step up and not to think, what is my boss going to think? What are my colleagues going to think? For most people, that starts to fizzle But as the youth, it's
As
still,
the,
it's so beautiful. And that's why I love having discussions with people who are young. Is it, you get that it's possible. If I think, if I can believe it, it's possible. As you said, go with the strength you have. Whatever I have, it's possible. And that's what I love. Um, and so coming back to kind of,
yeah,
focusing on South Africa and the youth, there are so many battles that I think people are fighting. We're talking about, I mean, so many levels of different battles, but if we look back at South Africa's democracy, 26 years of democracy, and there are certain fights that we're still fighting. People say, oh, what is this generation's fight? Or what is your fight? Or what are you standing for? And a lot of the things that the generations before us were fighting, we're still fighting. Racism, inequality, it's kind of these things that you're just like, but how are we still having these discussions? Or how is it okay for people to say things? But again, coming back to the youth, there is such resilience. I mean, I look at like a few years ago when we had, Fees Must Fall, that was led by, students. We had Rose Must Fall, that was led by the students. There's something that is so stirring. Recently, people started speaking about, decolonizing the school syllabuses. What are your thoughts on that?
what are my thoughts on?
Decolonization of the school syllabuses and the school education system in South Africa.
You know what? I think it's crazy that is still something that's an ongoing fight, even for this generation. That still blows my mind. It's absolutely necessary because till this day, even in 2020, we're still fighting for equal opportunities in university. Just fighting for the opportunity to be in university, to be able to have access to information so that we are equipped to actually live out our lives and our purposes and do something in the country that brings some kind of change. And the fact that a lot of us are not given the opportunity to just access the education is, I don't know, it just blows my mind. And so I feel like the fees must fall movement, I think is the beginning of I'm going to use the word revolution a lot, but I really feel like it is. And I feel like that fight is not over. It's still ongoing, even under a global pandemic. It's still ongoing because in as much as there isn't an annual increase in fees are still high. And a lot of people still cannot access basic education, basic higher education. And it's a little disheartening to think that such systems are still highly and so heavily protected, and that they don't have the best intention of the young person who just wants to be better equipped with education so that they better their lives and the lives of their family and those of their community and do something meaningful in the country. So that's really disheartening. And it's also just with regards to opportunities in universities and how certain syllabuses or modules, I guess, are still taught, and just all that. You think of some of the universities in Stellenbosch and how they are still taught in Afrikaans, and just things like that, and how it's just it just feels like there are so many barriers. So once you are able to get into university, aside from the university student loans that you have to face after graduation, just now having admission into the university, there's so many barriers within these institutions that you still have to overcome as a student, and it's still very disheartening, and I feel like we still have a long way to go. But the decolonization of educational system, especially in the higher education level, is still very necessary. It's an ongoing fight, and it's something that I feel like even privileged groups in the country need to realize, that everyone should have the right to just equal opportunity to access education. It makes no sense that other groups have better access and they're still so protected in 2020. I feel is quite absurd. So that's how I feel on the matter. But like I said, it's really disheartening, very disheartening, because a lot of these people are our peers, and thinking that you have to fight tooth and nail just to get an education and just to better your life is the craziest thing ever.
It's a lot. It's a lot. But I also think there are so many layers to it. I mean, even looking at what is taught in, primary schools and high schools, and if we're talking about the history of Black people, or the history of colored people, or the history of Indians and the history of Asians in this country, there are so many parts of the history that aren't told. And that comes up time and time and again. There is that quote or saying, like, until the lion learns to tell his story, it'll always be told from the perspective of the hunter. And on the one hand, yes, as Africans, we're trying to tell our own stories, but on the other hand, we've had to fight against the way our stories have been told to us for such a long time. I mean, like you said, you get to university level and opportunities in university, and then you start working. And then what are the opportunities when you start working? Do you hit a ceiling? There are all of these things. And then are there even jobs? Because our youth has such a high unemployment. So when we talk about, one of the fights that we continually have to battle, one of racism is something that, again, keeps coming up. And we ask again, are we still doing this? And spurred on most recently by the death of George Floyd in the US, we've now seen one of the biggest global Black Lives Matter movements across the entire world, where you've got like almost every single country having this this movement, this march, this feeling, whether on social media or on the streets. In the middle of COVID, this is happening. So how has this been for you? How have you seen it? How have you participated? What are the conversations you've been having?
So it's in the middle of a global pandemic, in the middle of fighting a virus. We are also still battling with a racial pandemic. And with George Floyd's case is, and I think I just want to touch on that just very briefly, about the police brutality that we see happening in the United States. And how we always hear these stories, and these stories do touch us deeply, and they hurt us as well. But I think with this particular one, and how this particular one came to be, just seeing it happen on live TV, I think was the biggest thing for so many of us. And I think that's why it just blew everything up, and people just felt as though we cannot stand by anymore, because it's happening right in front of our faces. And so the first thing for me was that, why do we have to fight for us to not be harmed? Why are Black lives treated as though they are disposable? A whole man was brutally murdered on live TV. Millions and millions of people saw that. And still there were systems that tried to justify it, systems that tried to protect it. And it's like a man's life was taken away unfairly and unjustly. And as a Black person, it's like, when does the fight end? When are our lives seen as valuable, and that we also deserve to live, and also deserve to thrive, and also deserve to experience everything else that everyone else experiences? When do we get to live normal lives and just be ourselves, and just not have to worry about looking over our shoulders because of the color of our skins? We are all human, and the fact that we have to fight for our particular race is, I don't have words for it. But so with regards to kind of being vocal about it, and I think just right now, with everything happening with the lockdown, it's just been trying to keep up with what's happening on the news and social media, and trying to stay as involved in conversations as possible, but also because there's so much happening, and it's just the story after every story. It's really so painful to continuously encounter this kind of reality, and sometimes you kind of just like sometimes you wanna put it away. Sometimes you wish that switching your phone off and logging off from everything and switching off all the news channels would mean that it's not happening, but it is, right? And
Yeah.
it's just something that you kind of have to be actively involved in every time to know what's going on, and knowing how you can, you know, raise awareness and let someone know that, okay, this is how we're going to deal with this, and help other races also acknowledge that, okay, we can't continue on like this. This is your part to, you have a part to play in this as well. So yeah, that the death of George Floyd has really shaken the world in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And it is continuously, we're going to see that kind of action happen continuously in different parts of the world, because people have had enough. Black people especially have had enough, and feeling as though we're constantly just feeling oppressed, and feeling as though we're not safe, and that we cannot live our lives freely or the way that we want to. Someone tweeted this, that being a Black person means that they have to search what kind of racism or the height of racism that exists in certain countries before visiting. And it really hurt thinking that this is our reality, you know. So it's
I was gonna say, I'm not even gonna lie. I've done that even prior to this.
Yeah.
There are places I've Googled, and I was just like, how are there Black people there? How are people treated there? Because the last thing you want to do in the world is leave the comforts of home to go to another place where you don't know what the reception of you coming as you are is going to be.
Color will be. It's absurd. It's absurd.
You, when you say things like, I mean, it's very interesting. You know, the how you said it a few times, like how much it hurts. I had a few of my friends, Black male friends of mine, who cannot watch, who haven't been able to watch the news, who haven't engaged on social media, who one particular one told me he couldn't get through the first part of When They See Us because he was just like, it was too real and he couldn't get through it. I know I cried through every single one of those episodes, but it's like that. It's like, yes, this is, you know, we're trying to make TV and series and stuff that is real, but it's like, it's so painful, you know.
It's so real.
Yeah. Even
it's so painful.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, even watching, like, you know, old like movies of like slavery, like 12 Years a Slave, it's very interesting the emotions that you can connect to something, because you can actually put yourself in those shoes. If it was, you know, a couple of hundred years back, that would have been us, you know, and those are our ancestors. That is it. It's like, it's in our lineage. So it's a different discussion. It's not, oh, that was history that happened in history. It's like, no, that happened to us.
Yeah.
You know?
You're connected to that history.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you even on racism, even with George Floyd, we also had Breonna Taylor, who was just shot in her house. And you know, one of the interesting articles that I read, which was also quite painful, was when it comes to violence in general, the way that obviously different races are received coverage in the news, but then on another level as well is how gender receives coverage on the news as well. And which stories get picked up. So we talk about George Floyd, we talk about Breonna Taylor, we bring it even closer to home, and we talk about gender-based violence in general in South Africa, you know, having one of the highest gender-based violence rates in the world. But it also kind of is, it's weird to think we have one of the highest gender-based violence and femicide rates in the entire world, but also how it's almost, I don't want to say like we become used to seeing this, but I think the responses and the reactions to people is what really irritates me, because it's like, Okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. Women are afraid to walk in their streets, go for a run, do anything, go to a post office because you that kind of level of fear, it's it's
Yeah.
it's 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 intense. But for you personally, like how do you feel as a Black female living in South Africa right now?
Okay, that's pretty loaded. Pretty loaded. It's pretty deep too. I feel as though I feel as though people don't want to face the reality of how Black women live in South Africa. It's almost as though and I'm referring to, when I say people, I'm referring to men, because it's almost as though it doesn't really affect them unless it happens close to home, or unless it happens, to someone that they know. Then it's like, oh wait, this is how they live. And before even thinking about things that happen that are tragic, it's having to understand that your mother, your sister, or your daughter constantly live their lives in fear.
Mm,
um, Being a Black woman in South Africa is it's scary, Rutendo. It's scary because it's like we have normalized this culture of every time I leave the house, I have, and I go somewhere, I'm at least notifying. Well, everyone at home knows where I'm going. I'm notifying my close circle and people who will be able to reach me where I'm going, of where I'll be going, and I'll have my live tracking app on, as to so that people can actually see where I am. It's one of those things. And then it's having to behave a certain way when you are around males. It's having to, giggle because you feel uncomfortable and you don't know what the response will be. You don't know whether to expect aggressive behavior, or if someone is just going to try to come at you and try to get your number or something like that. It's dealing with catcalls and trying to be polite and greeting and smiling, but also not wanting to do that too much so as to lead someone on, but you're already kind of feeling like you're already leading them on. And so it's just scary, and it's really confusing. And it's the most scary thing about it is that everyone looks normal. Everyone looks like a normal person. No one looks like they're going to jump at you and hurt you or attack you or make you feel uncomfortable. Everyone just looks like they're normal.
mm,
You don't even know who to trust. You don't know if you can trust your close guy friends, because even perpetrators of abuse, they look like normal people in society. They dress normally, they speak
mm,
normally. Everything about them is okay. Nothing screams, I'm an abuser, I hurt women, I oppress women. Nothing about them says that. And
mm,
that's the scariest thing about being a woman, a
yeah.
Black woman in South Africa, and feeling as though your life is just, anything can happen to you at any time. Having to be super vigilant is like, it's hard. It's like,
Mhm.
it's tiring living this way. I'm tired of
Yeah.
always having to be super cautious and super vigilant. Everywhere I go, I need to like look over my shoulder. I can't go to certain places by myself. I can't go to certain places at night. It's it's like feeling like your whole life is policed. I can't just wear something for the heck of wearing it. I can't just express how I am or express my sexuality without someone feeling as though I'm trying to you, as though I'm trying to start them up or whatever. So
Sure.
it's heavy. It's heavy. It's scary. It's confusing. It's tiring. I
Mm.
think. I think if I would like put a number one, it would be like it's tiring.
No,
It's crazy.
I completely agree. And for whatever reason, it feels like it's getting worse. Like you'd think that things would be getting better. You'd think that the conversations would, you'd think saying something, and it's scary because it's not. And I completely agree with you. It's like I walk from my place to the shops. I don't carry a cell phone. I kind of just, one way. It's one way direction. I'm going there. Don't make eye contact. All of these things. It's like that is the society we live in.
Mm.
But also just, some stats that I came across. Some of them was like 41% of people raped our children. And that again, we're talking about Youth Day. We're talking about, being a youth in South Africa where 41% who are raped are children. That's like minors. That's not even in the youth kind of category, but only 1 in 9 rapes are reported and only 4% get sentenced. So it to some degree, like even if you are to come forward and say something, there's this possibility that you come forward, you say something, and the perpetrator gets away. So it's kind of like what is supposed to happen. But do you feel like there are also just certain enablers or certain things that allow this to be the statistics of gender-based violence in South Africa?
When it comes to children, it's especially painful. It's because you're talking about children. You're talking about someone who's helpless. You're a big adult. You're this whole human being, and this is a child. Who looks to you for protection. And the most painful thing is that the enablers that we talk about in situations where children especially are involved are not only male, they're females in our families. And how a lot of these cases are dealt with is we're going to keep it in the family. We don't want anyone to know about it. This is going to bring shame to our family. And it's like everything is focused around protecting the perpetrator, and protecting the name of the family. But no attention is given to the victim. It's as if the victim is just, it was bound to happen, or it happened, but we're gonna move on from it. And nothing happens in trying to correct the behavior of the perpetrators. And so many of these things, so many of these situations, so many of these cases go unheard of, unreported. Some of them just continue to happen, and they continue to scar children, because males and females, men and women in families, are protecting perpetrators. We are an extremely cultural society, and in our cultures, there have been situations, or there are situations, where it is acceptable for males or for men to be violent towards their female counterparts, to their partners. It's accepted. And with children especially, it's almost as if in some cases women don't have a voice, and or choose not to have a voice with regards to protecting their own children. There have been so many stories that I've heard from either my friends or just acquaintances of situations where they would rather choose to protect the perpetrator in fear of themselves being put in harm's way, and when it comes to situations like this, I've noticed that a lot of, when it comes to just reporting cases, the justice system in South Africa is also quite cultural, because they'll tell you to deal with it in your home. This is a family matter. This needs to be dealt with in your home. You can't come here. You can't report your uncle. You can't do this. You can't report this is your father. And it's just everything. There's so many things that have been put in place to just continue the enablement of this kind of behavior. And it's like no one is really trying to do anything about it. It's like the people who are trying to do something about it are the people outside of those homes, the people outside of those families. Strangers are the ones who are trying to take an active stand up against these kind of situations. And children are not protected. Children are not protected even in their homes. No one is standing up for them.
So what would you say? Would you say that one would need to implement, or the government would need to implement, stricter laws of sort, or stricter sentences, or like what would it take in your opinion for something to actually happen, something big enough that would actually make this, a lot of the male perpetrators stop and actually go, actually there are consequences to my actions, as opposed to, oh, I might not even get caught, or I might get caught but nothing's going to happen to me.
Nothing's going to happen to me. That mentality is definitely there because they know that, they're heavily protected by community. And I definitely think that the enforcement of the laws and should be enforced, because it's just, but I don't even know if that would be something that would bring resolution or complete resolution to the issue, because even if there were stricter laws or stricter sentences, it's the doorkeepers, it's the people that you're reporting to in the police stations that are so lenient, that are still protecting perpetrators, that are so corrupt. That whole system is so corrupt that I could just slide, some money right there, and this whole thing goes away. So I think just the justice in itself, the justice system, I mean, in itself is, I think the way it is designed, just the way it is designed is, it works. I think it works. I think it is the corruption that exists there, in itself, that kind of that makes it impossible for it to be effective. And makes it impossible for victims to feel as though their perpetrators are actually serving time for what they did, or actually, or that they are actually receiving justice for what has happened to them. So I think a lot of things need to happen. A lot of things need to happen. And I think the biggest thing is, even though better laws could be enforced, and better sentences could be enforced, I think the biggest thing that exists here is a cultural thing. I think it's the biggest enabler of what is happening in terms of gender-based violence and violence against children is it's cultural, and a lot of people just think that it's okay to continue on protecting this kind of behavior and not wanting it to change, because changing it would mean that you stand there and you're in harm's way now, and no one wants to be in harm's way. No one wants to do the dirty work. No one wants to be part of the uncomfortable conversations. No one wants to point out the uncle who does things he's not supposed to, because he is financially supporting the family. So a lot of people don't want to deal with it, because it comes a lot of change, a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of sacrifice that would not be benefiting them. And that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, like I said, at the beginning of our discussion, it's kind of like there are these layered kind of fights and battles that we continuously have. If it's maybe not racism, it's something else. It's being youth. It's just being youth, finding a job. If it's not that, there's gender-based violence. If it's not that, there's xenophobia, there's patriarchy, there's all of these, I guess, levels and battles. And I mean, I hear you when you say I'm tired, because it's like, it's layered. It's big and it's layered. And then what does it mean for you to be within society and a country, and how do you raise kids? I've got friends who don't even want to have kids, who used to want to have kids, but now they're like, I don't want to raise children in this kind of society. And that is so sad. That it's like, on
I kind of relate to that. I love kids, and
yeah. So it's interesting, but as tired as we are and as frustrating as it is, we have to keep fighting. I think, even as youth, we can't stop. We can't stop, because it might not affect us, but the generation to come next, it might make
absolutely.
it. Yes, they might still be fighting the same battle, but we're fighting a different battle than the students of the Soweto uprising. We're fighting a different battle. We're still fighting, but we're fighting a different battle. And so the generations to come after us will probably still be having these discussions, but they'll be at a different level.
Absolutely.
And so it's important to keep fighting. And so I'm going to segue for our last couple of minutes. I want to dive into your 20s journey, and that's a big part of, obviously in my 20s is in my 20s journey. So looking at your 20s, I know you're 23, nice and fresh. Welcome. How would you briefly summarize your 20s?
Okay, so yeah, I'm fresher than my 20s. How I would summarize my 20s is very fun. I don't want to lie, very fun, but also a period that I'm realizing is a time to start putting in the work, start creating, cultivating stuff, and start kind of laying the foundation for the years to come, the 30s and the 40s. And I think 20s are, a period of direction. You're where you kind of choose to land your feet at is kind of going to set the course of the rest of your life, is how I feel about it, but not as like dramatic as it is, because you'll always have an opportunity to change course in the future. But 20s are definitely fun, and fun, interesting, so much to look forward to, so much of the unknown, but so much anxiety, but so much excitement, so much life, just so much. It's boiling with, opportunity and excitement, and the unknown has always just been something sexy about not knowing stuff. So
I love
not knowing what to expect in the future. Something so sexy about that. I love it. Yeah, it's just I'm having a really great time, and I mean that like all encompassing, even with the times where I've been very anxious about my future, the times where I felt as though I don't have a purpose, the times where I felt as though I don't know who I am, the times where I was just losing friends, the times where I just I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and didn't know where I wanted to go. Even those times were quite interesting and were quite exciting, because it's like you're this little ball that's being molded, and you're allowing yourself to be molded, and you're just like, you're not just looking forward to the final product, but you're enjoying this process of being molded, of not knowing, of not always being sure, of not always being certain. And I think that's just, I like the beauty of the process, and I think the 20s is like that process where you're kind of being molded and you're being shaped and being put in the fire a little bit. So yeah, it's super fun, super fun.
I really love that, and I love the way you describe it, but with such emotion. Like it's like, oh my word, it's like this exciting roller coaster. Then you're like, yo, but it's also it's 2023 again. You're still on the up. Let me tell you about this 20s roller coaster.
Yeah,
it starts like this, and then it like even towards the end, towards the 30s, like but it's fine. You're gonna be all right. Don't stress yourself.
I like that.
But in saying that, I think I mean I've thoroughly enjoyed today's discussion. It's discussions that we, no matter how we feel emotionally about them, we need to have. It just so happens that right now, I mean, I was like, what are we going to discuss? There's so much happening in the world right now. Let's see if we can kind of like discuss it all, because it really is layered. Being in your 20s is layered. Being in your 20s by itself is layered. Dealing with the things that come with being in your 20s from an emotional, spiritual, physical, every kind of level is difficult. And then you've got to work. So cherry on top. Kind of that said, I mean, what advice would you want to leave for people in their 20s at the moment? It could be advice for someone who's also just entering their 20s, someone who's just turned 20, someone who's in their 20s. What advice do you have for people in their 20s at the moment?
Growing up in my teens, there's always this little quote that I never really understood. It actually it irritated me a lot. It says trust the process. I never understood it. I was just like, what process? Like, what are we talking about? And then I think I started understanding it when I was, when I turned 22. So I think a year ago, it started making sense because I understood that now we're kind of dealing with a new whole level of existing, I guess. And now you're kind of dealing with a lot of things, a lot of shifts that are happening mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, a lot of things that you've known, a lot of concepts are changing, the way you perceive life is changing, you're growing, you're evolving, you're maturing, a lot of the things that you used to like you don't like anymore, you're starting to get new interests, there's just so many changes happening. But I would advise people in their 20s, whether you're like literally about to, close a door in your 20s, or if you're just stepping in brand new, to trust the process, and to not be afraid of the lows of life, not just like the lows of your 20s, but generally the lows, because there are lows. There are times where you really just question everything. And sometimes we deal with things like mental health, and sometimes we deal with not knowing our purpose. And those are very scary times. But I would I would I would want someone to take that as an opportunity to see it as a growing pain. It's a growing pain. So it's not just a painful thing that you encounter and it's just painful. It's painful, but it comes with growth. And it's necessary for where you need to be. And so you'll look back on it 5 years, later, and you'll be like, wow, I needed those growing pains. I needed to evolve from that state to the state that I'm in now to kind of handle what I need to handle now. And so I'll definitely just say trust the process. It's so cliche. It's like, it's really annoying. I don't even like how it's worded. I'll try to like phrase it differently one day, but definitely just trust the process and enjoy the process. Enjoy the highs and the lows of entering your 20s and changing and losing people and gaining people and changing your mind about what you want to do for the rest of your life. Enjoy it, because um, once you kind of settle into it, I think it's just like, it's not an easy ride, but it's like it kind of smooths out a little bit. So you need some of that fire to kind of brush up those edges, those little hard bits. You need to be refined. So trust the process. It's gonna be okay. Whatever you're going through right now, you're gonna get past it. It's just growing pains. And once that period is over, you're gonna be like, whew, I look great. I'm thinking like a champ. My perception on life, beautiful. You're gonna love it. So just trust the process.
Love it. Love it. Solid, solid, solid advice. I'm a word. Thank you so much. Thank you for a lovely chat, a beautiful conversation. I really, really enjoyed it.